Hi, welcome to this channel on magnetic energy, technology, principles, and applications. This video is magnetic energy and astronomy, and this is a bit of a follow-up video from the last one that had taught like the Big Bang topic, just to help answer some questions about this. Now, here's the warning on these videos. All of these videos contain alternative information. They are not consistent with conventional science. So if you are 100% sold on conventional science, these videos may really piss you off. And I apologize for that, but someone's got to get this information out there. If you want more information, go dig into the notes from Tesla and Steinmetz and a whole bunch of other brilliant minds in the last 100 years and look at their notes on etheric energy and etheric physics. And there's been a lot of experiments done that validate etheric physics. So what I do on these videos is I touch on a variety of topics related to what we call the magnetic energy model. And this is simply an etheric model of the universe that's based on the magnetic energy technology, the units that we've worked with, and our experiences associated with that technology. And so there's a lot more to be done with this, but I think it's important at this point to start getting this information out there. And if it's controversial, I apologize for that, but someone's got to be putting this information out there. So when it comes to astronomy, we have a world right now that works primarily with passive technology. With magnetic energy technology, we go from passive to active technology in the astronomical field. But let me back up for a second, because I got to touch on a couple of fundamental differences that are happening with the understanding of how things are working in the universe from this magnetic energy model point of view. So, in a natural phenomenon such as like a star, and there's other natural phenomena that have this same process happening, the initial response from an energetic reaction, and this could be a transmutative reaction, it could be any kind of fission or fusion type of reaction, the initial manifestation of that reaction is a pulse. And that pulse of energy has identifiable magnetic energy structures in it. And they all vary. So these pulses, like pulses from one star, vary from pulses to another star. So as a pulse happens, it creates a pulse will move in a vortex like that. And this is if you want to imagine something like a ball of energy is created. But now keep in mind, we're talking about a reactive pulse that triggers an etheric response. Okay? So a pulse moves very efficiently through the ether because of its polarities, because it is mostly neutral. So think about the different grades of ether and the energy exchange that's happening in those grades of ether. So if you're in what we call space, there's a low exchange rate. So you have a predominantly neutral field that is latent, that is everywhere. And as you move, like say, for example, into an atmosphere or an ionosphere, you begin to have a much higher etheric exchange because of the fields of energy that are in that. Now, we may call them molecules, or we may put a lot of names on those, but essentially what's happening is the etheric exchange in a more concentrated energetic field causes a pulse to convert into a wave. Okay, so what astronomy currently looks at is what they call the wave spectrum. Now, the waves are a different type of manifestation in the etheric field. Now, a wave also moves in that type of pattern, but a wave moves much less efficiently, it moves slower, and it is easier for basically us to detect at this point because of our current technology and because we're working with highly polarized technology, or we think of terms of like the visible light spectrum or the electromagnetic spectrum, x-rays, and these type of things, that we are looking at wave manifestations in the etheric field. So the etheric field responds to this energetic reaction, and we measure that as a wave. The pulse, now, so you have wave origins, like a true wave origin would come from that initial pulse elongating into a wave. That energy slowing down, elongating, and then turning into a wave structure that we detect with conventional technology. So from a magnetic point of view, what we want to do is we want to detect the pulses. The pulses have a lot more information, a lot more energy, they move a lot faster, and there's something that you can detect if you have the proper neutral magnetic fields that resonate with those pulses, and you have the proper alloys that can capture those pulses. So right now, from a conventional point of view, most of the really valuable information that comes to our planet from outside our planet passes right through most of the equipment. If you just have a mirror, or you have sensing equipment or a radar, whatever it is, most of the valuable information is passing right through all of our conventional equipment because it's not designed to capture any type of neutral magnetic resonant energies. So let me back up 1 second. Most of the electrical technology around the world, and I'm speaking in generalities, of course, in this video, and that includes the manifestation of pulses into waves in the etheric or in the universal processes, because there are certain times when a wave could be produced, but that's only because it's being converted near the source. And that's what's happening in most of our electrical equipment, most of our electrical technology. What happens by the time we get to measuring what's produced, and it could be from any type of power generator, anything that involves an electrical field, we've already lost the pulse. The pulse has already been converted to the wave, what we would call the wave, and it's creating a wave type of pattern in the etheric field, and that's what we detect. Now, just to back up a minute, light doesn't actually travel. Like, you're not going to actually have photons that are going from one star all the way to us. What's happening is you're having a reaction that's creating a response in the etheric field. Okay, so, and as a pulse happens, that pulse moves very efficiently through space, and it moves in that vortex very efficiently. When it hits anything of substance where there's a higher level of etheric exchange, it elongates into a wave, particularly our atmosphere, or some type of equipment. Like, it can, depending on what's happening and what that equipment is made of, it will either pass right through or it will elongate into a wave. So there's a huge problem with that process because we're missing most of the valuable data. So when you have magnetic technology, you actually create an attract field that attracts the magnetic resonance signatures of stars, of other solar systems, of other galaxies, of quasars, and everything else that's out there. You attract that to your device, you map out those magnetic resonance signatures, and then you permanently have that in storage so that you can attract that at an instantaneous level. So to put it in conventional terms, you are producing a type of quantum entanglement with an astronomical body. So you get the data directly from that source, from that body, instantaneously, because you've created an attract field to that with your magnetic technology on this planet. You've essentially quantumly entangled with that other body, and now you have instantaneous information at a distance. Spooky action at a distance. So now, why is that important? Right now, the way astronomy works is so passive. It's like you're reading a newspaper that's 100 years old. The news has changed. When you're simply working with trying to track light waves and you have passive technology, everything we see is so ancient that the star isn't anywhere close to the light that we are seeing at that when we get that light. So that it's almost, I mean, it's fun and it's neat, but from a space travel point of view and from a real actual astrophysics point of view, the information isn't very valuable, because even if you could travel at the speed of light to where you think that location is, by the time you get there, the star is so far away, it becomes completely meaningless. And then as you're chasing it down, you're working with old information, very old information. And so with the magnetic technology, you have instantaneous action at a distance that you are entangled with that energy. Now, here's where it gets a little cooler even than that. And wait, there's more. So, as you monitor the energy coming from stars or galaxies or solar systems or whatever it is, astronomy is concerned primarily with the electromagnetic spectrum and primarily with light waves of some frequency. But when you're in the magnetic world, what you're looking at, we don't even care if we're looking at, like, the visible light doesn't necessarily mean anything in the magnetic world. What we're looking at is we are attracting the magnetic pulses, the magnetic vibratory resonant signatures in those magnetic pulses, and that gives us everything we need to know about that structure, about what we're looking at. And so then we take that data and then we can translate it into a full 3D view of what we're looking at. So think about that from even a planetary perspective. If you were looking at planets in another solar system that's many light years away, as soon as we lock on to the magnetic resonant signatures coming from that planet, that ionosphere and everything around that planet, or whatever, even down to the surface and the combination of elements and everything on that planet, as soon as we lock onto that, we have an instantaneous connection with the magnetic resonant vibratory signatures and the pulses that are being produced on that planet, and we can see in detail what's happening on that planet then. Now, coming from looking for alien life and life on other worlds, we would literally see down to whatever structures and development and everything that's taking place on that planet. Now, the funny thing about that is if they're using magnetic technology, they will detect that we are detecting them. So that's just something to be aware of. And let's just hope that they're friendly, and most of them are, despite all the great science fiction. So, as you can see, when you start thinking in terms of locking on to specific magnetic pulse rates that have embedded with them a tremendous amount of information, the technology becomes very active, and the alloys involved in that are able to capture more neutral energy, which there's an unending variety of mostly neutral magnetic energy signatures that have some polarization in them, and that accounts for like different elements, combinations of elements, energy fields around planets, magnetic fields around planets, gravitational fields around planets and stars. All of those have resonant signatures that you can lock onto and then get that information instantaneously. And the interesting thing about that is, as you are monitoring stars, let's say for example you're looking at like Alpha Centauri, or you're looking at Vega, or some of the more popular stars. As you look up in the night sky, you're seeing very old data. But when you look at a magnetic energy from a magnetic energy point of view, and you're locking on to the magnetic energy signatures of that body, your device, if you will, is pointed in a completely different direction. But you get the true position of Vega in that given moment, or whatever star you're looking at. So you have the true position and the true composition of what's happening with that star, with the elements around it, with the fields around it, the gravitational magnetic fields, and everything else that's coming from either that star, that planet, that solar system, whatever it is that you're looking at. and you have the true location of it, which can then be documented, which is absolutely essential when you move into magnetic energy space travel, because your ship works on an attract principle that goes far beyond light speed. So you need to know where you're going. The other thing that's interesting about this is this energy, this I'll just, the conventional term being quantum entanglement. It's more, we would say from a magnetic energy model, it's more of an interdimensional process that we're actually we are invoking, we are incurring an interdimensional process, but it allows you to go so much further than anything that conventional science can detect by just looking at the common electromagnetic spectrum or the visible light spectrum. And so outside of what we've mapped as the known universe, you can start locking onto all of those signatures and see much, much further than you can from a conventional astronomical point of view, and start mapping out much more of the actual, what would actually be called the physical universe, far beyond what's been mapped out. And so just to kind of get your wheels turning on really what's happening with the etheric energy, pulses going into light, into waves, and what we really want to do is we want to look at the origin, true origin or energy of an object, and not simply be trying to capture waves and analyzing waves. Now, the interesting thing though, one last thing about that is, from the magnetic energy perspective, and you can say, well, wait a minute, if it's just the etheric response to that initial reaction, how are we getting all that information? In that etheric field, as waves move through that etheric field, and they'll move in like in a corkscrew, like in a vortex motion, and same with pulses, as they move through it, in that process, in that exchange, there is a tremendous amount of embedded information. So even from a light wave point of view, as science breaks through the magnetic energy model and they start diving into the subatomic signatures of what they call photons, which that's a mental construct, a mathematical construct. But when they start diving into the subatomic signatures of the expression, the etheric expression of that's happening in what we call a light wave, they will see there's a tremendous amount of information that is stored in that etheric response. So that even as the light waves are analyzed, you can document differences between the light wave sources. And one of the biggest things about that would be like if a star is sending off light that's reflecting on a planet, and then we see that light, that difference between those light waves, like what we get from the star and the planet, they have embedded signatures in them and that are identifiable. So it not only does the active technology reaches out into the universe to get the information that you need, but it also greatly enhances even just the simple act of analyzing light waves that are coming to our planet from around the known universe, from around our known universe. So I hope that wasn't too crazy and out there, but I just wanted to give that perspective, and I'll see you next time.